So there is a verse in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 25 that I have constantly been coming back to. And it reads, "The ants are a people not strong, yet they provide their food in the summer." Come on, somebody. Don't even get me started. I told myself I wasn't going to ramble. I have been sitting with that line for months now. And I think a lot of it is that the verse is not about power or scale or speed. It's about provision. I would even argue it's about intention, right? It's about showing up steadily and building something that lasts. And today I want to talk to you about why that distinction is going to matter. At least now more than ever as we're going through this AI economy transition, you know? So the economy is reorganizing everything underneath all of us, right? The old model, the one that told you that, you go get a full-time job with benefits and stay there until you retire. That model is fracturing. AI is not the cause of that fracture. If you've read or listened to any of my work, you already know what I'm going to say. AI is just accelerating it. It's exposing it, right? And here is what, honestly, what I actually think is happening. We are in the middle of a transition from a unicorn economy to an ant economy, right? And most people have not realized it yet, and it's not because they are not paying attention, right? I think a lot of it is actually because the transition looks unremarkable from the outside. It's hard to pick up on, and it's a bit quiet. It's distributed. It's local. It looks like one person solving a real problem for a specific community with a well-designed tool. It's not always going to look like $1 billion valuation. It's not going to get a TechCrunch headline. It's about building something that I believe long term, by the time the headline writers catch up to it, the ants will already, you know, be moving constantly throughout the economy. So stay with me on this one because this is going to be a hard analogy to follow. If you have been building something small and specific and you feel like it does not count, I feel like this episode is for you because I know so many people who are building right now. And, I just wanted to get this message to you as quickly as possible. So let me lay it out for you. For the past decade, the dominant imagination of entrepreneurship has been the unicorn, right? The company that scales impossibly fast. A company where the valuation jumps from millions to billions before anyone really understands like what's actually being built, right? And I think that mythology made everything feel so urgent and loud. You have to build fast, you have to raise faster, you have to, just pray that the fundamentals eventually catch up to what you're building, right? And to be fair, some of that produced genuinely useful things. Like I don't want to make it seem like I'm downplaying that. But at the same time, it also produced a lot of WeWorks and Theranos and a lot of companies that were performing growth rather than actually building something that would last, right? And look, as a historian, I'm not surprised by this pattern at all, right? Every era has its mythology about what legitimate ambition looks like, right? In the 1950s, it was the corporate ladder, right? In the 1980s, it was the hostile takeover, right? In the 2000s, it was the IPO. So each mythology shapes who gets resources, who gets taken seriously, and whose work gets to count. And I think the unicorn mythology told an entire generation of builders that unless you were chasing scale, you were simply thinking too small. And here's what I want you to actually notice. It's that the unicorn mythology was built for a specific set of economic conditions, right? So it required cheap capital. Oh, let's be honest. It required, abundant consumer data. Hello, internet era. It required a labor market that rewarded employees for trading security for equity, right? So those conditions are changing, and they're changing fast. This is the brunt of my argument. Um, Obviously, interest rates have shifted. The era of free money essentially has ended. Workers who used to trade stability for startup lottery tickets, come on, because we don't know how long those companies didn't last. They're looking around and asking a fundamentally different question. It's not a question of how do I build something that gets acquired, but how do I build something that actually sustains me? And I think that question leads somewhere very different than, the typical unicorn mythology that we're all used to hearing about. Okay, let's talk numbers because I already know all of my econ friends and PhD friends are going to be like, show me the numbers. Okay, so according to research at Upwork and multiple labor market analysts, approximately 36% of the American workforce now participates in some form of gig or freelance work, right? The nature of the labor market is changing. That's what I'm arguing. That is over 70 million people, right? And by 2027, those same projections put freelancers at over 50% of the US workforce. So essentially over half of all Americans within the next 2 or so years. Um, and I want to be careful here because I know how statistics can get misused. So when we say gig economy, we're talking about a genuinely wide scale or wide range of realities, right? So we're talking about the Uber driver who had to leave a full-time position or got laid off. We're talking about the consultant who chose independence instead of working for a company. We are talking about the software developer who left the company to build their own tools or once again was laid off. Like the labor market is volatile right now. These are not all the same story. But they do point to the same structural reality, though, that I'm trying to point out is that the labor market is fragmenting. So the traditional employment relationship where a company provides you with wages, healthcare, retirement, and continuity in exchange for your labor, that relationship is being systematically unwound. Right, it's fragmenting. That's the argument. Here is where I think we need to be very precise about what AI's role is in all of this. AI did not create the gig economy, right? Platform companies like Uber and TaskRabbit built the infrastructure for disaggregated labor long before, mind you, the current AI wave arrived, right? So what AI is doing is accelerating the disaggregation of knowledge work specifically. Okay, hopefully you're following my argument. The jobs that people thought were protected because they required, expertise and judgment, things like writing and analysis, design, research, coding, all of those things. Those are jobs now being restructured around AI assisted contractual work. Okay, so the full-time knowledge worker with a salary and benefits and a career path at a single institution is now disappearing overnight. And this is a conversation we need to have in academia. And I think that will be a separate podcast episode, or I'll find the appropriate avenue for that because this is something that I am very worried about when it comes to the fragmentation of higher education. But that's a separate thing we can talk about. Essentially, what I'm arguing is that the conditions that made, that arrangement stable, the idea of a full-time knowledge worker, that is changing fast and it's changing faster than our institutions are able to adapt to that, right? And if you're waiting for someone to sound an official alarm before you start paying attention to this, I want to be honest with you. The alarm has been going off for a while. We have just been very good at not hearing it. And I think that is the part I really want to get at is that this fragmentation, this disaggregation that I'm arguing is happening, has been going on for decades, right? We know the stories in academia, right? We know the increase in gig work that has been happening for decades, right? So I'm just trying to point to the overall arching trends that are starting to be manifested and exposed by the new transition to the AI economy. And honestly, I want to know where you all are in all of this because I know there's a wide range of people who listen to this podcast. So are you currently full time? Are you a freelancer? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you somewhere in between? Drop it in the comments because I'm genuinely curious about what this looks like for people that are listening to this. If you want to go deeper on this topic, I write about AI, the humanities, and the future of work in my newsletter, which you can find in the link in the description. Okay, so what does the alternative actually look like? Obviously, not trying to cause any panic or anything like that, but what is the real model for building well in this particular moment? And this is where I want to introduce to you what I've been calling the Ant Company. If you have been subscribed to my newsletter, you've already read about my theory on the animal kingdom of companies and entrepreneurship. And I want to introduce the concept of an ant company. So ant companies are not startups in the traditional sense. Okay, they are not trying to disrupt an industry. They are not raising a Series A. They do not have a pitch deck with a hockey stick growth curve on the slide. Come on, we've all seen those pitch decks. What they have is a specific person with deep knowledge of a real problem, building a precise solution for a community that actually needs it. Okay. So sometimes it is just one person with a Notion template that saves a small business owner 10 hours a week. Sometimes it is a two-person team building an AI workflow tool for, I don't know, therapists who are drowning in documentation at the end of every session. Um, Sometimes it is a neighborhood developer creating software for a local food co op because the platforms that exist were not designed by people who are in that community in the first place. So what makes ant companies structurally interesting right now, to me at least, is that the entire technological landscape is reorganizing around them. Think about it. AI tools that used to require enterprise budgets and full engineering teams are now accessible to individuals with a laptop, some agentic coding, and a focused idea, right? And collaboration is happening across time zones in ways that used to require massive corporate infrastructure. You need a distribution, basically a means of reaching an audience, finding clients, building a reputation no longer requires institutional backing. You can be a one person team with deep expertise, genuine relationships, a set of well chosen tools, and a problem worth solving. You can build something real that way. And here's the historical parallel that I keep reaching for whenever I think about this. After the printing press made text widely reproducible, scribes did not disappear. Come on, somebody, because we love the printing press analogy. They evolved into editors and translators and critics, people whose value was not mechanical reproduction, but, interpretive judgment. You know, After industrialization, the most successful craftspeople were not the ones who try to compete with factories on value, right? They were the ones who went deeper into specialty, into quality, into the specific needs of a specific community. And I think AI is creating another one of those transitions right now. The people who flourish in these moments are rarely the ones chasing a large empire. In my opinion, this is just a theory I'm putting out for you guys to mull over. I think more often they're the ones working with attention and care. The ant strategy is not about competing with scale. That's just how I see it. I think it's about outmaneuvering scale with precision. And that is a game that individuals and small teams can actually win at, right? You can move quicker. You can solve very local problems that really huge companies and institutions just don't have the bandwidth to work on and to deal with, right? And I think ant companies grow naturally by listening. They grow by iterating, they grow by forming networks of mutual support instead of hierarchies, right? Many of them are profitable from day one because they don't need much to thrive. They just need clarity and really a community that trusts them, and will buy their services or product. And there's something else worth saying here too. Um, I also want to point out that ant companies are becoming the in many ways quiet research and development labs for communities that have been overlooked by traditional tech. And this is something I'm very passionate about, especially as I'm teaching more and more humanists how to code and how to build things. I'm finding that they are experimenting with AI in real time and translating its potential for industries and neighborhoods that big companies either ignore or don't have the capacity to address. because there's just not enough margin in it for large corporations to actually work on some of these problems, right? Um, they are the ones proving that expertise still matters, right? That judgment still matters. Um, that that human intelligence still matters in an age where all of those things often feel undervalued, right? So if you're already building like an ant, come on, something small and focused and grounded in real expertise, I genuinely want to hear about it. Drop what you're working on in the comments. I'm being so serious right now. And if this kind of thinking is useful to you, subscribe to this podcast because this is where I just drop my voice notes. And sorry, it's been a tremendously busy past few weeks, so that's why I haven't been able to send a voice note to you guys in a minute. But yeah, I just want us to have a conversation about this. And actually, let me just close this whole thread. Let me bring it back to where we started. I talked about that verse, Proverbs 30, verse 25. The ants are people not strong, yet they provide their food in the summer. The ant does not need to be the biggest thing in the field. That's what I'm arguing. The ant does not need a valuation or a tech crunch headline or even a Series B or a viral launch moment. Come on. I know we've normalized that, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just providing an alternative. I'm saying that ants need clarity about the problem that they're solving. You know, the ant needs the community that they're serving, right? The ant needs to build steadily in the season that they're actually in. So if you're building something small and specific and grounded right now, you are not thinking too small. And I get it. Come on now, especially for those who are tuning in, my American audience. We always were taught bigger is better. But the more I'm working on these things, on these topics, I'm like, look, is the future really big? Is the future really bigger, or is the future more specialized? Is it smaller? Is it more localized? Is it decentralized? Is it filled with people who were once excluded from being able to shape the future, now shaping it in a local way? you know and I'm not saying there aren't instances, obviously, where you need bigger infrastructure and things of that sort. I'm just more so interested in encouraging people to keep building, even if it's not a big thing. You do not have to be an international conglomerate or think in terms of that to think that what you're doing is meaningful. you know you're already doing that. You're thinking clearly. You're building the infrastructure for a transition that most people cannot even see yet. Like I said, the labor market is fragmenting. You're doing good work. You're keeping human expertise and human judgment, and human care, right, at the center of production. At exactly the moment when those things are most at risk of being replaced right now. Um, so yeah, we are in a summer of transition. I know a lot of people are predicting an AI winter, and look, that's a whole separate episode. But um, just build. This is what I've been telling people. Now is the best time and the best window of opportunity to build. So if you can build, please build. Solve the problems that you see. Solve the problems for the communities you care about. Because now is the best time to build. Okay? So if this episode resonated with you, yes, please comment below. Let me know your thoughts. I want this to be a conversation. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, wherever you're listening to, whatever channel you're on, if you haven't done that yet. And yeah, come find me on Substack. I write a weekly newsletter at the intersection of AI and the humanities. And if you prefer to read longer parts of my stream of consciousness, you could do so there. It's always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next time.